Welcome to Rockstar Doctor Life. I'm Melissa Longo, and each episode, my guests and I will bring you fresh, fun ways to rock your life as a health professional and create a business that aligns with who you are and the life you want to live. Hey there, everyone. Welcome to another episode of Rockstar Doctor Life. This week, I thought I would share with you my thoughts about originality in your practice and in your personal life and why it is so important. I recently had the chance to give this presentation when I was one of the speakers featured at the Alliance for Chiropractic Alignment event in Ottawa, in my beautiful nation's capital, the beautiful city of Ottawa, a few weeks ago. And it was really well received, and I had lots of great feedback around what I shared, and I certainly had people tell me they wish they had been there. So I thought what I would do was take some of that content and share it with you here on this podcast. Which reminds me, if you have an event for chiropractic health professionals that you would love me to come and share some ideas with, if it works with my schedule, I would most likely love to be there and share my ideas. I do love speaking and not only speaking at events, but I love the opportunity to connect with people in person. And I'm also going to remind you the importance of that yourself. You know, we can learn so much these days through reading, through blogs, through podcasts, through online trainings, through videos. However, there's nothing that can replace in-person connection with people and the conversations that you have there and the friendships that you build and the collaborations. And overall, they're just such a positive experience. And I know that some docs resist going to events these days because, you know, there's travel, there's time, there's the expense of it. But I'm always going to remind you that you do need to budget your time and energy to get to some live events to support other ventures within chiropractic that resonate with your heart and soul and align with your values, but also to nourish you and to grow clinically and professionally. So make that on your list of things to do in 2020. Okay, guys. So when I talk about originality, I believe that it is one of the keys to a simple life and practice. Now, just because it's a key to being more simple doesn't mean that it's easy. There's a big difference in my mind between ease and easy. And we'll get into that in a little bit. But the reason this topic came to mind for me is because I speak so much with doctors about connecting with who they are. And I have this conversation so often, it surprises me. You know, I have doctors in their 20s, 30s, 40s, 50s, 60s who I get to work with. And I have these conversations with even at these events. And they'll tell me, you know, somehow I've forgotten who I am. You know, I don't think I'm really showing up fully in my practice the way I used to. And I think that this is something we need to really dig into and examine, because if you're not showing up as yourself, to me, that is the fastest way to an unhappy life and business. And it's certainly detrimental to your practice, in my opinion as well. So a couple of questions for you to think about getting started. You know, have you ever had moments in your life or practice that you can still remember so vividly because you said something that really just didn't feel like something you would say? You know, have you ever said yes to something that didn't align with really who you were or something that you really wanted to do, but it felt like something you should do? Something that people expected you to do? Have you ever felt like you had to turn down the volume of who you were to make other people happy? Have you ever found yourself going through the motions of life, you know, the day-to-day tasks and responsibilities that you have for your family life and your business, and then stop and think, wait a minute, is this even what I really want? You know, some of the hardest times in my life have definitely been when I said yes to some of those questions. And I can remember quite vividly a moment where I was sitting across from someone in my former practice. I can remember the look on this gentleman's face. I can remember the color of the walls, the desk, how I was sitting. I can remember every single detail about that encounter. But what I remember the most, that still sits with me, is the feeling that I had inside me when I was sharing with him something. It was in a report or it was in some type of consultation environment. And I could hear words coming out of my mouth that really didn't align with how I would express chiropractic, how I wanted to express the procedures I had in my practice. And I was doing so at that time because I was part of a different practice. And I remember feeling so disconnected from what I was sharing with that gentleman. And that is a feeling that I never want to have again. And in fact, that's a feeling that really changed my practice because I started asking questions. I started thinking, wait, if this doesn't feel right with me, if it intuitively doesn't feel right, then what other things might not feel right? You know, it sparked something in me. I started asking questions. And then the more I asked questions, the more I examined my behaviors. And then as it happens, one decision started to lead to another decision. And effectively that changed my practice model, which also ended up changing my life. So essentially, when I embraced my own uniqueness, when I embraced my originality, when I started having to ask myself the questions about how do I want to communicate chiropractic? How do I want to market my practice? What kind of care plans do I want to offer people? What are my best clinical skills? What am I comfortable referring out to others? And what am I comfortable taking on as their healthcare professional? When I had to get clear on these things for myself, it really changed the whole nature and shape of my practice. And these are some of the things I want you to think about. You know that I love music. I've looked at rock stars as inspiration most of my adult life. I feel that, people who are artists are true originals. They have to go out there and share their gifts with the world. Sometimes when they're not really feeling up to it. Sometimes when people have criticized them. Sometimes when it's taking longer than they expected to get their message out, to build awareness, to really hit it big. And I've always, been inspired by rock stars because I feel like they're the kind of people who are out there creating for the sake of creating, sharing their gifts, and oftentimes receiving great benefits, living a life that matters to them and having a lot of fun. So I think if we can create this kind of life for ourselves, what would that look like? And that's where, if you haven't heard me talk about the show and where it got its name, Rockstar Doctor Life, that's a piece of it. I asked myself, what would it look like if I could create my own rockstar doctor life? If I could live like a rock star in my own community? What were the things that I needed to feel like I was sharing my gifts of health and healing and my communication style and to help inspire people in my community while having the kind of lifestyle that really works for me and for my children? So I started to craft it. But in that whole process, I wanted to have a bigger conversation. And so, as you know, I started the show. The first show was Rockstar Doctor Moms. Then it evolved to Rockstar Doctor Life. And in the past 120 something shows, I have, and I know as of recording this, it's 128, but when you might hear this, it might be closer to 130. So we'll see. But in all the past hundreds of shows that I've had and all the different guests I've had, one thing has been loud and clear. And that is that there is absolutely every opportunity for you to create a life and a business that reflects who you are. Every single one of those guests that I've had on the show, we essentially talk about originality. We talk about how you can create a business that aligns with your goals for your family, your best skills, what you actually want. So if you want a big practice, if you want a boutique practice, if you want to work with other people, if you want to work solo, if you want to do research, if you want to do locums, some kind of hybrid of all those things. All the guests I've had on the show have been able to do that for themselves. And that's why I'm still so passionate about doing the show, and I will continue to have conversations over and over again because it keeps me inspired as much as I know it offers inspiration to you. So, when I think about originality, and I asked this question of the audience members that were there, what does it actually mean? What does it mean to be original? And a lot of people said, it's being yourself. It's being authentic. It's maximizing your strengths. It's being an individual. So if that's the case, then why do we lose a sense of that? When I think about kids, I think kids are the true originals, right? Kids are 100% themselves. So you see kids in your practice, or you have children of your own, and they're goofy and quirky, and you can, their personalities, and they are 100% themselves. But somewhere along life's journey, we start to change, right? We start to conform. We start to hide parts of ourselves. And like I said earlier at the beginning, I think that's because it's easier. It's easy to conform. It's often a lot safer to do so. It's easy to follow scripts and to have someone else do your marketing. And I'm not saying you shouldn't have some other people do your marketing, but I'm saying it's easy to follow other people without stepping back and thinking, is this really what makes sense for my practice and what I want? It's easy to not really get to know yourself, to just keep that superficial, I'm going to keep going through life and not really question things and my values and whether I'm aligned with them or whether the people around me are right for me. That's easy. It's easy to not go there, right? Sometimes you have to looking at yourself and your behaviors is not easy. It doesn't require you to change anything. If you're going to just conform to do what everyone else is doing, it's really comfortable. But doing whatever everyone else does isn't going to necessarily change anything in your life or in your practice if it's not right for you. So I'm going to encourage you and challenge you to get more comfortable being uncomfortable. Because I can tell you that when you actually do embrace yourself in your own originality, you absolutely will create a thriving business that you love, and it'll make you happier. You'll grow your practice, and you'll have more impact. And those are the types of things we're going to continue to talk about in this week's episode. There are 3 steps that I shared about becoming more original and how can you start to embrace your originality. And these aren't mutually exclusive steps. They all connect to each other. And like I said earlier, if you follow some of them and embrace your originality, I believe you will live a life of more ease. But ease does not mean easy. Just like in our practices, when we adjust people, we create more ease in the body. Doesn't mean that the path to healing is always easy. Sometimes there can be some inflammation and pain, and it can take longer than people expect, and more work or other modalities or other nutritional changes. Well, the same as when you start to embrace who you are and your own originality, you might have to make some decisions that are difficult. You might have to get to know yourself a little bit deeper. You may need to make some changes. That might be hard, but I guarantee you that even though being original is not easy, it is the best way to improve the world around us. And that's not something that I've said. That's the work of Dr. Adam Grant. And we're going to talk more about his research as we get into this. The first thing I want you to think about, though, is when we talk about becoming an original, the first step is you really have to get connected with yourself. And, as I said, that might not be easy, but the process of getting to know yourself and then getting to know what you want and why you believe you're here on this planet, as a chiropractor, a health professional, as a parent, if you've had kids, as a human being, maybe there's other ideas that you have, ways you want to contribute to the world that don't connect to your role as a parent or as a doctor. You need to understand what your why is so that you can continue to evolve and make choices that align with that. And if you miss that step, you could be missing a really big piece that will keep you connected to all the action steps that have to follow in making some changes in your life. So, this whole process of knowing yourself and, connecting with your why and then really getting clear on what you want. So what do you want in your life from business? I go through this really extensively in the Create Your Own Rockstar Doctor Life workbook, which is a free download for you on the Rockstar Doctor Life site. So I'm not going to go through it all right here because I certainly feel that the work that myself and my assistant Laura put into creating that book for you and that free download is worth your time. So I'd recommend that you go and grab it. And Jen, I want you to work through it and make some space and time for yourself to answer the questions. And obviously, you're going to go through it and it's going to maybe trigger you in a few ways, and it's maybe going to push you to look a little bit deeper into some other areas. And if that's the case, I want you to reach out. If there's something I can help you with or just at least give you some direction about where to take your next step, I'd be more than happy to do that. But it may be that you're going to realize that there's some other self-work and self-discovery that you need to take on. And that's okay. That's part of life's beautiful journey and the adventure of being you. But once you get to know yourself and your why and what you believe is the things that you want in your life, which is that very first step, then the good news is that you can actually start to adapt yourself to become more original. You can adopt habits that are typical of original thinkers. And this is where things get really interesting. And this is Dr. Grant's research. Adam Grant wrote the book. He's an organizational psychologist. He's done a really great TED Talk on original thinkers. If you haven't checked that out, go and watch it. I'm a fan of his work, and I'm a fan of some of the things he's written about. And I really feel they can apply to us as chiropractors. So, 5 habits that he talks about that original thinkers tend to have. The first one is that original thinkers are not afraid to fail. They're not afraid to have bad ideas. The only way you can have a bad idea is to not actually have the idea in the first place. So you have to be able and willing to embrace failure. And I know that's easier said than done, people. I get it. I tell my kids all the time, I hope you have lots of failures, and they think I'm horrible. And I tell them, no, hear me out, dudes. When you fail, you have to then revise your plan. When you fail at something, and it doesn't have to be a massive fail, it could just be that maybe, a marketing thing you did in your practice didn't really go the way you wanted it to. Maybe you hosted an event, you didn't get the turnout that you wanted. Or maybe you hired someone and that they didn't work out as great as you thought they were. That's okay. Move forward, reflect, find out what you did wrong or what can be improved, and start again. Something I talk about in the Inner Circle, the group that I coach with Dr. Ed Osborne and Jason Richardson for online entrepreneurs, is we talk about or I've talked about rather, this whole CPR cycle. So creating an idea and having that idea that you want to share with the world, then actually producing something, which is the P, CP, and then the R is then taking a step and reflecting on everything. And so to me, that CPR cycle is not only obviously life-saving in, our practices if someone needs attention, but CPR is also life-saving in your business too. You need to always be creating ideas, producing them, and then reflecting on what worked and what didn't work. And that is the difference between original thinkers. Originals are afraid of failing, but what sets them apart from the rest of people is that they're even more afraid of failing to try. Okay, so their biggest regrets are not their actions that they took that didn't work out, but the chances that they didn't take. So I'm going to encourage you to fail forward, to embrace failure as an opportunity to learn, and don't waste another minute thinking that you don't have something inside you that the world needs to hear, or that your ideas are not valuable. You're never going to know if you don't share them. And so what are you hearing in this for you right now? Is it something in your practice, an idea that you have? Maybe you want to start a podcast, or you want to start doing videos, or maybe there's a new technique that you've been really anxious to learn, or maybe you did go to a seminar, learn a new technique, but you haven't been confident yet enough to start using it in your practice in some small way. Maybe you want to change up the decor in your practice and make it feel more like you. There's plenty of ways that you might apply this, but I'm going to encourage you to take a little step forward. Don't worry about whether things are perfect or not. Take a step forward. Be okay with the idea that you might fail in some small way, but know that you got this, and know that you can always move forward into something else. Okay? So that's the first habit of original thinkers. The second habit of original thinkers is similar in that original thinkers embrace weaknesses. And what that means is that they are more likely to ask for help when they need it. They are more likely to know that there's some skills they are not good at, but they can make themselves good at it, and they can learn something new, or they can find the right people to help them. They're not trapped by their limitations. So again, what are you hearing in this for you? No one's perfect. You're not designed to be perfect. You listening to this have lots of skills that I don't likely have, and I might have some skills that you don't have. And I'm sure your assistants in your office, or maybe associates that you have, or other practitioners have skills that you don't have, and they can support your business. They can support you. So where can you find some help? Where can you learn to get better at something that is one of your weaknesses? The third habit of original thinkers is that they are able to overcome groupthink in a different way. Now, groupthink is a term that denotes the idea of going along with something just because a group of people think that the exact same thing. I think that as chiropractors, we've had to deal with this already in many ways. I don't know about you, but I've had plenty of situations in my practice, in my community, within my family, where I made a decision or had a recommendation or a thought about health and healing that didn't go along with mainstream society or what was currently happening. And over the years, I've definitely had to listen to the opinions of other people that I didn't understand or resonate with. But I'll tell you what, those opinions, hearing them, helped me find more clarity in my position. It helped strengthen my ideas. And sometimes it challenged me, and it made me rethink them in other ways too. So don't be afraid to hear the opinions of other people, even though you don't agree with them. Be okay challenging the status quo in your community, whatever you're seeing or hearing, that you don't agree with. Be brave enough and courageous enough to overcome that idea, because people need to hear the truth from you. They need to hear what's the message that you have to share. The fourth habit of original thinkers, and I joke that this is my favorite one, is original thinkers are procrastinators. And what that means is that, even though procrastinating can be a vice for your productivity, it can actually be tremendously useful for your creativity. So if you just dive into it, you have an idea and you jump right into it, you're going to probably execute it fine. But if you're to give yourself a little bit of time and space to let that idea kind of, percolate in your mind a little bit. Maybe, you never know. You might have that idea and then you're out for a walk and you get another idea that might support, how that project might roll out. If you have to give yourself time and space to let the ideas that come up, take more shape and help fuel the creativity about what they might look like. It also gives you the chance to bounce ideas around other people. So not that I'm going to tell you to not act, because I'm always going to tell you to act. And that goes back to the first habit, which is failing, be okay jumping into something. But I don't want you to just jump in without taking enough time to just let it sort of simmer in your body a little bit. Let your brain digest it, and let your brain think about how can you make this better. And some people have actually had to force themselves to become procrastinators because they just want to execute right away. But when they've taken a step back and really let their mind kind of free flow their ideas, a lot of great things happening. Probably one of my favorite stories I've heard about this was Martin Luther King. The night before the biggest speech of his life, he apparently was up till 3 a.m. writing it, right? 3 a.m. while he was there delivering his speech, he was still actively improving. 11 minutes in, he leaved his prepared remarks to utter 4 words that changed history, right? I have a dream. So being able to have ideas, write them down, even push yourself to the last minute. I mean, I work really well when I'm on a deadline. It gives your brain time and space to be more creative in the whole process. And that's where your originality can shine. All right, the 5th habit of original thinkers is that they are able to embrace role models and influencers. Now, I hope that you have some great role models and influencers in your life, and you have organizations and events that you go to so you can connect with people and hear them. But the difference between original thinkers and everyone else is that they don't only take these influencers and role models and make something and listen to what they say. They actually take the information from these influencers and role models and make something completely new and original out of them. They take the information they gather and then they make it into their own, right? So listen to that very carefully. It's not just going along and doing what all of your role models and your mentors and your coaches have told you. It's listening to their ideas and then taking them in and thinking, how does this make sense to me? Do these ideas really reflect the values of my business? Do they reflect my own personal values? Would they even work in my practice environment in the town that I'm in? How can you take the ideas that you get and implement them? To me, that's also a big difference between coaching and mentoring. When I'm in one of the programs I work with, I'm very much a coach, and I'm showing people the steps and the secrets and the things that they need to do to succeed, because they are active strategies and steps. And if you miss them, your business and the ideas that you have might not come to fruition. However, mentoring is completely different. And when I work with my one-on-one client, it is much more of that kind of mentoring relationship where we're sharing ideas and talking about things so that I can help them embrace who they are and make their practice revolve around them. So it's much more, we talk much more about frameworks and ideas and help them craft their own message, rather than, hey, just do this what I say. This is the script for you how to do your new patient exam or your report of findings or something you need to be saying on every visit with your practice. I don't believe that's the right thing for many people. I believe we can have frameworks of things that you want to communicate, but if you try to say something that doesn't really feel like you, it's not going to be delivered effectively, and you're not going to be able to persuade the person sitting across from you principally into what you're trying to sell them. And that goes back to what I shared with you at the very beginning. My whole experience, I heard myself saying the words that someone else told me to say, and it didn't feel right. So I don't want you to do that. So when you have role models, influencers, coaches, mentors, look at the relationships that you have with them, and then be confident taking the information that they're sharing with you and implementing it in a way that fits you. Okay, so once you have taken time to connect with yourself and what you want and your why on this planet, and you've just listened to these 5 habits of being more original, the next thing I'm going to remind you to do, step 3, is to hustle for what you want. Now, some people, hustle, they don't like that word. I think hustle's got a bit of a bad rap lately. I personally love the word hustle. For me, it's having clarity around what you want, and then the confidence to relentlessly take action and boldly pursue the outcomes for your business, your health, and your relationships. If you want something, you actually have to make the conscious choices to go make it happen. You can't just sit back and not. So to me, hustling is working towards things that you want, period. And for that matter, it's one of the most important words. And there's a whole culture around the importance of hustle, and that it is a good thing. So if you're feeling that the word hustle makes you feel overwhelmed or makes you cringe or makes you think like, oh, that just sounds like such a grind, then I'm going to encourage you to go back to, step 1, which is get to know yourself and your why. Because if you're really clear on those 2 steps, then nothing seems like work, And the other thing is, if you really know that, but you still don't like the word hustle, then maybe you just need to choose a different word. Because I guarantee you're probably doing those things that make you happy. You're doing those things that align with the kind of business that you want to grow for yourself. You just maybe aren't thinking about it as hustling because you're doing it in a way that is really aligned with who you are and maybe does not create any overwhelm. It doesn't create any stress for you, and that's perfect. In that case, that's exactly what we're talking about with hustling. But you absolutely need to take steps to make things happen for your life, to make sure that you're living with who you are as a forefront. Now, why does this matter? And this is likely where we're at right now in our conversation. I believe without a doubt that when you embrace your originality, you will be happier. And in case you've forgotten, that matters. You matter. Being yourself is the best thing and the simplest thing you can do for your personal happiness. I could not imagine having to show up as someone different in all the different roles that I play. Whether I'm in my practice, when I'm working as a coach or mentor, when I am doing podcasting, when I am with my kids, for me, Okay, I don't swear as much in some situations. I'm trying not to swear as much on these episodes as well. But in all those different roles that I play, I am 100% myself. My energy is the same. My personality is going to come through because I've learned that when I've done that, it actually attracts the right people to me. Whether they're my coaching clients, mentoring clients, or they're people in my practice. And that is the second reason why I'm going to remind you to be original, is because it will grow your practice. When you actually get really clear on the environment that you want to be in, you decorate it, you make it feel like you, when you market your practice according to your values and what matters to you, when your marketing reflects you and your personality, when you actually just bring your personality into your practice and let people connect with you more, this is all going to help you find the right people who want to hear the message that you have to say, and it's going to help you connect with people when they're in your office. So not only are you going to retain people in your practice longer, but you're going to attract the right people. You know, we have a cushion in the office, certainly not in the office in my home, that says your vibe attracts your tribe. And I absolutely believe that. You know, when you show up as yourself, you are going to attract the people that belong in your practice. And that's a powerful thing. The more people that come into your practice, well, here's the third reason why I believe being original matters for you. You're going to make a bigger impact. People need you. You know, we all need you to share your message of health and healing with people so that people can live healthier lives, whether they're in your community or on a massive global scale. When you align yourself, your habits, you know, when you hustle for it, when you're clear on what you want and you're able to craft that into your own experience in your office, then magical things happen. People get well. People are inspired by you. And we need you to do that. We need you to go out there and change the world one person at a time with the message that you have. So I could talk about this at length, and I want to try to wrap this episode up here today for you. And I certainly, guys, reach out if you want more information about how you can be more original, if there's something that I can help you with. I'm happy to jump on a call and have this conversation with you. Or maybe just even do another podcast if there's questions that come up. But what I want you to think about now is, you know, what are you going to do? So you've heard me talk about these things. You've heard me talk about the importance of connecting with yourself. You've heard me talk about these habits that original thinkers have. You know, you've heard me talk about why this matters. So what are you going to commit to doing? You know, what did you hear in this for you right now? And what are you going to change? You know, my favorite slide that I used, it gave me chills when I saw it. It's a quote by an artist that I really appreciate. I'm going to share with you right now. Maybe if you had been different, you would have been what they wanted. But if you had been what they wanted, you'd be different than who you were supposed to be. You know, we need you to be original. We need you to be who you are. You deserve that for yourself. You know, and I believe that if we did all the things that we were capable of, we would literally astonish ourselves. And yet we sit back sometimes and we don't do all the things we're capable of because we're afraid. But please, 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 please be original. You know, don't turn down the volume of who you are, who you're supposed to be. When people around you tell you to be more normal, or they try to shush you, shame you, silence you, or tell you something, you know, that you don't want to hear about who you are, I'm going to ask you to step up. Don't listen to it. Your genius is unique. The way you have the ability to share chiropractic and help people's healing is yours. We are on this planet for a relatively short period of time. Unfortunately, that message has been too clear to me the last few months that I don't want you or me or anyone that I care about to waste any time hiding the truth of who you really are. You know, if you were to do everything that you were capable of, you would astonish yourself. And I want you to astonish yourself. So I hope you enjoyed this episode today, a little bit longer than usual. But again, I hope you found something of value in it. Be sure to go grab the free download. If you haven't done that workbook yet, it might give you some perspective and some of the insights that you need. Reach out if you have more comments or feedback, or if there's any other way I can help you. And otherwise, have a great rest of your day, guys. Go out there and be original. I hope you enjoyed today's show. Find out more about today's guests and everything else that we talked about in the show notes. You can also find all this content and so much more, including videos, blog posts, and how you can work with me on the Rockstar Doctor Life website. If you haven't yet reviewed the show, we'd love it if you headed on over to iTunes, subscribe, and leave us a review about what your thoughts are about future episodes for the show and what you like best. Feel free to connect with me on Instagram at Melissa Longo DC and of course on Facebook. Thanks again for listening. We'll see you next time.